Welcome to the premiere episode of the SMEEA Podcast. My name is Jose Rodriguez, your third vice president. Today, we are going to be joined by Jose Segura, the Santa Maria Bonita School District's Community Schools Coordinator. We understand that a lot of our members still have a lot of questions about community schools, what they are, what that means for us at the site level, our role as an association, and what that means for us as educators. And before we begin, just a little housekeeping. You can find these interviews on YouTube and our brand new podcast, the SMEEA Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you happen to find these episodes, whether on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We hope that you will find these interviews, these episodes, enjoyable and informative. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are here with Jose Segura, the coordinator of community schools in SMBSD. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Hey, thanks a lot for having me here. I really appreciate it.
We're glad to have you. Before we dive in, though, there might be some folks watching or listening who don't know who you are. So maybe you could just take a minute, give us some of your background, what you do now before we start.
So real quick, I've been with the district since 2001, elementary classroom teacher. I did that for quite a bit of time. For the previous 11 years prior to May of last year, I was president of SMEEA. I loved doing that kind of work, really felt like I was contributing to the greater good. And since May of 2024, I have taken on the role of the district coordinator for community schools. Again, another opportunity to do good work on a larger scale. So I'm really excited about what I'm doing and the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look familiar. I think I've seen you around the around the SMEEA office. Just tell us a little bit about what the coordinator's role is.
Well, as of right now, I've essentially divided up my responsibilities over the next several years into 4 phases. And phase 1 was really about educating, collecting data, but primarily getting folks ready to apply for the state's community schools grants. And these are distributed through the California Community Schools Partnership Program. There's legislation attached to that, and there's also funding attached to that, right? So when I talk about the grant money, it's all about those funds that the state has set aside for community schools grants, right? $4.3 billion over a 4-year distribution cycle. And so there's already been 3 years of cohorts that are out there, and these cohorts are 5 years of funding. So we actually applied for this 4th and final cohort, all 21 of our schools. So that was kind of my phase 1. Phase 2 is the work I'm doing now, which is talking to folks like you, really preparing sites and folks to implement the community schools framework within their community schools, their school sites. Phase 3 is the implementation phase. Not every school is going to implement at the same time. It's really about being ready to make that happen. Each school site working at their own pace, making sure they have the bandwidth to make that happen and are comfortable moving forward. And then the 4th phase, once implementation has occurred across all of our sites, is really focusing on being able to sustain funding beyond the 5-year grant cycle. What we don't want to see is really great things happen at our schools and then not having the funding to continue those things on day 1 of year 6. We want to make sure that there's funding in place to make sure that the last day of year 5 and the first day of year 6 transition seamlessly.
Yeah, not that I want to jump the gun and project too far into the future. But so basically that would entail incorporating like LCAP, LCFF, those kinds of funds and factoring in.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at areas that are being currently funded that maybe those dollars have been allocated but not necessarily spent. Can we pull those back and then reallocate them? Are there some things that are going to sunset or maybe just need to sunset, right? Or need to retire particular streams that we're funding because they no longer serve a purpose or have a value? Recapture those dollars and take a look at targeting those towards community schools or braiding those fundings with other state funding, private funding sources, really a whole lot of different areas where you could grab dollars and streamline them into community schools.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained that because I know that's a question that's come up. What happens when the grant money runs out? So thank you for addressing that question that I haven't gotten to yet with you. Another question that's come up from our members is, what is community schools? So maybe, what is it? Maybe give us an elevator pitch. Like, what is it? I know it may be hard to encompass all of that in a short definition, but if you could.
Sure. Well, it depends on how long the elevator ride is. But essentially, community schools are public schools that serve as neighborhood hubs, right? Bringing together academics, health, and social services, bringing in the youth and the community development, and really community engagement as part of this kind of holistic process, right? At the heart of all this particular model is our site community school specialist. Oftentimes, you'll hear them referred to as community school coordinators, but because in our district, a coordinator is a district level person, we refer to them as community school specialists. But this person is a dedicated professional who serves as essentially the linchpin connecting all of these elements together. The community school specialists, they identify community resources, they build and maintain partnerships, they coordinate services, engage families, and ensure that the programs address the specific community needs, right? So by managing this integrated network of supports, the coordinator helps remove barriers to learning, allowing teachers to focus on instruction while students receive the comprehensive support that they need to thrive academically and personally.
Yeah, I love that you described it as like a neighborhood hub, because it is very local and unique. Like it's more than local; it's like neighborhood based, which is awesome. So thank you for that elevator pitch. That was a decently timed elevator ride.
Sure. Maybe 4, 5, 6 floors on a slow elevator.
One of the things that we hear often about community schools is that it's kind of built on 4 pillars, and I get that kind of different organizations have different numbers of pillars. I think like NEA's got like 6. I don't know. There's different groups have different numbers of pillars, but there's 4. What are those pillars? What are they?
That's a great question. So the 4 pillars of community schools are really a part of the state's community schools framework. So if you think of the framework as a document broken up into 6 segments, the one segment that we hear a lot about is the pillars because the other 5 really build into it, right? And so the 4 pillars of community schools are integrated student support. So all these things we do for kids during the school day outside of academics. Think about things like meals, healthcare, mental health, any kind of additional supports and services, checking their eyes, checking their ears, providing their parents with access to supports throughout the day. That includes tutoring and conferencing and so on. We do a lot of things during the day that are outside of just straight up academics, right? The other pillar is expanded and enrichment learning opportunities. And we actually have a whole department downtown that's what they focus on, right? This idea of expanded and enrichment opportunities. Sites also have their own avenues to provide additional expanded enrichment opportunities for kids after school clubs, things like that. So we can get it from a lot of different directions. Migrant programs, Saturday schools, summer schools, intersessions, a whole bunch of stuff. The one thing that we want to see added to that as a community school is how do we take these expanded and enrichment opportunities and connect them to the classroom? So that what happens in my science class or my history class or my math or my English, how is that connected to the opportunities I have outside the classroom every day? So taking my academic world and connecting it to the real world in which I exist. And then the third one is active family and community engagement. Again, we have a whole department downtown that I'm part of. That's what they do. Connecting to families, connecting to community on a regular basis. So how can we as a district not only support at the district level family and community engagement, but really support the site levels version of that? There is a fair amount that occurs at the sites, but it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and energy to make those connections, to get out there, to bring people in, to find out what are their hopes and dreams and their interests. And so the community schools model really is about bringing somebody into your site who can handle doing that kind of work and not putting it all on the plate of 5 or 6 different people. And then, of course, the fourth pillar is collaborative leadership and leadership practice. Collaborative leadership and practices. So this whole idea that leadership doesn't have to be embedded into a single person or a single group of folks, right? We often look at our administrators, principals, vice principals, district level administrators. These are our leaders, and they're the decision makers within the district. So how do we move away from that top-down decision-making design and really incorporate our educational partners into that process? Teachers, classified employees, parents, students, community partners working together to identify the needs of our students and our families, and then working together to come up with a plan, and then putting that plan into action, having the funds to support it. And then most importantly, having the responsibility to evaluate outcomes down the road, right? And Mr. Rodriguez, Jose, we hear this all the time, even from teachers back when I was president, is folks want to be part of decision making, but they don't necessarily want the responsibility of outcome. And so we have to get folks to kind of rethink what it means to be a partner in education, and from all different levels. And we have administrators who love to collaborate, but they have that when things go wrong, it falls on me perspective. And I totally understand that, right? How can we move away from that also, so that it's not when things go wrong, they fall on a single person, but when things don't work out the way we plan, how do we collectively work together to reevaluate and pick up ourselves and look at where we need to do, what worked, what didn't work, and then moving forward together. So those are the 4 pillars of community schools.
Thank you. And the way you answer the question maybe answers my next question, but maybe I could just dial it in a little bit more. It sounds like our district already offers a lot of services educationally, some wraparound services already. And I think our district does a pretty good job with that. But how will community schools be different in providing those services, in providing wraparound services, educational opportunities? How is it different?
So that's a great question. It's a question that I get all the time. So we need to move away from this concept of wraparound services, because that's a giving concept. We are providing for, right? We're doing this as a district. When I say we the district, right? When kids are hungry, we feed them. When they can't see, we provide eye exams. When they have mental health problems, we bring in counselors and therapists, and we provide a lot of this stuff. But community schools is about all of us working together, all of our educational partners collaborating in order to make things happen for everyone, right? So it's not just the district providing for students, but it's also how do we access our parents? So one example I like to use is when a student has difficulty seeing in class. So I have a 3rd grade child in my class. We find out a month or 2 into the school that they're not doing well on their work because they have difficulty seeing the board and reading their book. Okay, so we have access to nurses, folks who can do an eye check, quick exam, do that for free. We can then refer that student and the parent to a local optometrist. If the parent doesn't have insurance or the funds to have those exams done, we can figure out a way to make that happen. If they need to get glasses and they can't afford to do it, we can figure out a way to make that happen. So now I have a 3rd grader who has glasses, who has had an eye exam. They have the tools they need to be successful. And then we send that 3rd grader home every day and we say, read with your parents for 15 minutes. And that parent also is visually impaired. So they can't read the book, just like they can't see the board. And so they can't help their student do the thing that we're asking them to do. So why can't we do for the parent what we just did for the child? And that's really taking the kind of work that we're already doing as a district, thinking of it more community-based instead of school or student-based, right? And expanding those services out so that we are really addressing the needs of the community, right? Partnering with local organizations who, like Lions Club, for example, who are really into eye health and eye care, or other organizations that might be willing to help fund glasses or eye exams for parents. And not necessarily doctors and ophthalmologists, but maybe it's farmers, maybe it's a tech company, right? Lots of folks out there in our community want to engage with their local schools, but they either don't know how, or they just don't have the time to make it happen. So if we can reach out to them and provide them an opportunity to engage. Oftentimes what I hear from companies and that I talk to and people who own businesses and work for local organizations, it's like, we just needed somebody to come and ask us. So let's be those people to go out and ask and develop those relationships. And so that's part of how it's different from just the things we do now. Another piece of it really is, kind of goes back to thinking more holistically about all of our educational partners and the work that we do, so that it's not me, a principal, and you, a vice principal, talking to a few people and getting an idea of what our students and our parents need, but really sitting down, talking to our parents, talking to our students, collecting real data at a street level, not at a district level or a state level, but right, kind of where the rubber meets the road. What are the barriers to your students' academic success? And oftentimes what we find is a student isn't doing well at math, so we'll give them tutoring, or we'll keep them during lunchtime. We'll provide these direct supports, but maybe it's not about more time to learn. Maybe it's about 2 or 3 things back from there that are happening at their home or in their community or within their family that are the barriers to them getting to a point where they're ready to learn. Unless we start having conversations with folks, we'll never know what this is. And we'll keep trying to do the thing that's right next to it without getting the kind of results that we want.
Yeah, I love that idea of addressing the needs of our parents by asking them, instead of having this kind of patriarchal approach of this is what you need.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, principals, teachers, district level administrators, a lot of us do talk to parents. I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
True.
But we don't have as a clean street level systematic way of making that happen, so that we are really talking more about hopes and dreams as opposed to just kind of higher level academic stuff. Yeah, we look at the state dashboard, we look at all these different kind of higher level data sets, but what's the street level data set that we can really as a site dive into and be able to follow up with? Hey, here's what we hear from this data we're collecting. Let's have a secondary conversation, focus group, whatever it is, to really dig a little deeper and find out how we really can help our families and our students.
So I guess the next question really is then, what does that look like practically at the district or at the site level? Like, who's involved? What are the teams called? Who's on the teams? Like, what's the practical nuts and bolts? Sorry, that's probably a huge question.
No, that's okay. That's a good question that I'm getting from a lot of different directions. Tell me what it looks like. And the phrase I hear a lot within the community school community is that when you've seen one community school, you've seen one community school. This idea that it's okay for each community school to operate uniquely from others. That doesn't mean there's not some consistencies across community school sites, but there has to be the flexibility to do what needs to be done at the individual school, so that if Battles and Oakley and Alvin all need something different, that's okay to do something different. Or if Fairlawn and El Camino and Bruce need the same thing, it's okay to approach that in different ways in order to meet the needs of the folks which you serve. And so it's important to kind of think in those terms. As far as what can we look at that's kind of universal across, some of the pieces of the community schools framework include 4 different elements that the state says these are best practices. Like, if you don't have these things, chances are you're not going to be successful, right? And one of those is having a district level steering committee and then having individual steering committees at the sites. So at the site level, this is not your student council. This is not your school site council. This is a separate standalone team that doesn't have the legal constraints of a school site council, more diverse than school site council because it includes not only parents, classified, certificated management, but it also includes students and community partners. And the site can decide what those numbers of each of those partner groups looks like, unlike school site council where it's defined by law, right? School site councils often are there to approve things like the school SIPSA, the plans. The community school steering committee looks at the community school's budget, which could be the grant dollars. How can we best utilize those dollars in order to meet the needs of our families and our students based on the data that we collect, right? And so that steering committee should have the authority and the power to run a needs and assets assessment and then take a look at that data and evaluate it in a way that makes sense to them. At the district level steering committee, their responsibility is to support all the sites, right? Do for the sites what they can't do for themselves, to provide them with connections to support and services that can be district-wide. And so there's these different layers of support for the sites. Another element is the needs and assets assessment. And I know sites do a needs and assets assessment right now for their SIPSs, but again, we're really talking about that street level data. Really kind of boil it down to 3 or 4 or 5 very specific questions you're going to ask folks, and then using that data to get an idea of how you move forward and how do you circle back to folks. A third element is the idea of having a community school specialist at each site. And the community school specialist's responsibility is to take all these elements and bring them together. How do you connect families and students with the different supports and services that they need? How can you help implement after school additional programs, expanded learning opportunities? Are you making connections with the community, doing home visits, putting on family events, doing a lot of the things that we have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different people at our school doing, but they're doing it on top of their already full-time responsibilities, right? I like to tell principals that all those little things you do throughout the day that eat up a lot of your time, that keep you from doing the things you may want to do more of, like visiting classrooms, meeting with parents, talking to students. These are the, engaging with your community. It's hard to do when a good part of your day is being spent doing the little things all day long, important things, but they add up really fast. And so those are just 3 components of a community school design that are kind of universal. But again, when you've seen one community school, you've seen the one community school.
I love that. That's funny because I was going to say, you and I have actually seen quite a few together, and they work kind of different, definitely. Mm-hmm. One thing, years ago, you and I went down to Anaheim, and we checked out the steering committee at the ASTA, the union offices there with Grant Schuster. And it was really cool to see all the different stakeholders in that meeting. Community leaders, it had like district admin, the union leaders. But what was really cool was to see the students. Is that something that we're looking to do as well? And again, I know every school is different, but are our students maybe too young to participate in those?
If you would ask me this question 5 years ago, I probably would have said, "Oh, yeah, no, our kids they're little. They're not ready for this." But I got to tell you, when Melissa Dutra was here in our district, one of her legacy pieces is our district-wide student leadership group, and that's something that's continued even beyond her tenure with the district. And I've had an opportunity to meet with those kids, to present to those kids, and I see them at board meetings giving their presentations. And this is a group of bright, engaged young people that are 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and they would be amazing partners within site steering committees, even a district steering committee. And so I no longer believe that our kids are too young. I believe now that they just need to be provided with opportunities to do the kind of work that they're completely capable of doing. They have great ideas. They have a really interesting perspective. They are more ground floor than even the teachers are, right? And they're the recipients of all these things we talk about. And so we should actively engage with our students when it comes to these types of processes. They call it community school for a reason, because it includes everybody who is connected to our schools, and that absolutely means our students.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I have several students, and yeah, I've watched the school board meetings, and I've seen those students present. And yeah, it's embarrassing when I present at the school board meeting, and then they follow me, and they're way better than I am. So yeah, I believe it. I'm taking a lot of your time, so I will ask you one more question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
There is a concern, and I'm sure you've heard it from some of our members, that this is just another top-down district program, just something added to our plate. How is this different? What's SMEEA's role? What are the teachers' role in making community schools a reality in SMBSD?
That's a really good question. And I hear the same thing. How is this different from the things that we have, the way we've always done things? And I'll go back to what I said just a minute ago, is it's the community part of community schools. Not just serve a community, but community engagement of all of our educational partners. Every group who's connected to our schools. This idea that the school is the hub of the community. It's not just an element within the community. And so bringing all these folks together. So how do we keep it from being top down? We have to work with intention. It's not going to happen by accident, right? So we need to be very intentional about the work that we do and how we engage with folks. For example, creating their site steering committees, making sure that they're not just generated as a team, but they're trained, they're given the information that they need, they're given the resources that they need so that they can be effective, not just put a team together and say, well, here you go, figure that out, right? So that's part of the work that I need to do at the district level. So not necessarily top down, but my job as a support person is to train up those site steering committees so that they can run independently, they can run cohesively as a team of equals, not as a team of followers to a single person or to a couple of people. That's the same thing at the district level. My responsibility is to help bring the framework to our school and help implement it across our sites at a speed in which is comfortable to them, right? This whole idea of going slow to move fast, that you don't rush into something simply because you have to, that not all school sites need to move at the same pace. We're going to have our early adopters next year, I'm sure, because there's always that group. And we're going to have other sites that don't have the bandwidth for it today. We can work with them on other things, other components of community schools as they move towards their implementation date time, what works for them. Some sites are going to implement right away. Others will be a year or 2 years from now. That's okay. That's actually built into the state's framework. The state completely understands that. Oftentimes, and I'm sure you've been around, Jose, a while, you know that when programs are handed down from the state or by the district, it's kind of like all for one. We all start at the same time. We all pace through the same way. We have to end the same time. And then we are required to meet certain expectations along the way at particular milestones. This often happens also with state grant money. Here's the money. Now do the things we want you to do. Community schools grants don't necessarily work that way. The state is saying, we want you to work towards community schools. Here's a framework to help you figure out what that means. Here are the 4 pillars in particular to help you kind of hone in the work that you're going to do. But we understand as a state, you're not all going to work at the same pace, that you're going to start with A, B, and C, and maybe a year from now, you're going to realize that it's really C, D, and F, and that's okay. Tell us what happened there. What went wrong? What changed? How did your priorities shift, right? Are you still focused on the 4 pillars, on the framework, and are you still moving forward as a school? And so a lot of these little bits and pieces that maybe on their own don't seem like a big deal, collectively, it creates this opportunity for things not to be the traditional top-down pyramid-style leadership, but more of a collaborative cyclical leadership where everybody who is connected to our schools is working together to not only make things happen, but to take responsibility for outcomes and for evaluations.
And that's the idea of community schools being more democratic. It's not just this authoritarian, this is what we're doing, moving forward. It's the teachers, the district, parents, stakeholders, everyone is got a voice, an equal voice, and like you said, responsible for outcomes. So
yeah, right. Because we work for the district, administrators, teachers, classified employees. We have a stake in what happens. Our students clearly have a stake in their outcome because these are their futures, right? Yeah. Our parents have a stake in what happens in our schools because they want their children to be successful. Whatever that means to them, there's that element of that. And our community members also want our students to be successful because those are future employees, future business owners, future entrepreneurs, and we want our community to continue to grow and thrive, and we need those students to be successful beyond elementary, junior high, high school, into college and career readiness. We want them to have the tools they need. So why not include them in that process?
Exactly. Well, I've taken a lot more of your time than I promised, so I apologize. But this was great. I thank you so much. And I look forward to more opportunities for us to have these educational, informative meetings, whether it's Zoom. I know you're doing presentations, and I'm sure you'll have more presentations and roll them out to the sites. So.
Yes, absolutely. So quick plug for myself. I'm not sure when this is going to launch or you're going to drop this on your podcast, but I am setting up weekly update sessions, classified, certificated management every week, having at least one session with each group. Each session is going to be short and sweet, maybe a 10, 15-minute presentation, time to ask questions, single topic so that we can really focus on something instead of being gunshot. Let's be very intentional and specific because I want folks to know more and to understand more about what the potential for all this is. So for SMEEA members, tomorrow, Thursday, is going to be the first session, but after this week, it'll be every Wednesday between now and the end of May. We will be doing Zoom sessions with SMEEA members.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll get that out. I'll be posting it on our social media, emails, awesome. Everything we can do to get the word out. So thank you so much, Jose Segura. It's great to see you, even just virtually. Appreciate you as always, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Enjoy your week.
You too. Wow. Okay. Once again, I want to thank Jose Segura, the coordinator of community schools in SMBSD, for his time. As always, he is quite the explainer. You can tune in every Wednesday to join Jose Segura on Zoom to learn more about community schools until the end of May. And I hope that you will continue to join us here at the SMEEA Podcast on YouTube. We hope that you will like and subscribe and share these episodes with your friends and your colleagues. We hope that these episodes will help to inform you about community schools and other issues affecting us locally, statewide, and nationally. Again, please do us a favor by liking and subscribing to this episode. We appreciate your continued support. All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video. And remember, the struggle continues. Right? Take care, guys. Bye.